The house sat quietly on the edge of a small, newly built subdivision. At first glance, it seemed safe. A single-story ranch-style home, beige siding, white trim, warm light glowing from inside. But in the back, past the trimmed grass and sagging wooden fence, lay an ocean of blackness, an endless cornfield, stalks waving like skeletal arms in the wind. At night, it was worse. The field swallowed all light except for the pale glow of the moon. Wind rustled the dry husks, sounding like whispers or rattling bones. The only window facing this abyss belonged to a 12-year-old boy. It was supposed to be a safe neighborhood. New streets, new families, new dreams. But when the sun went down, something else came alive. Inside the room, the boy slept soundly. He was a wiry kid with dark hair plastered to his forehead, breath slow and even. A small plastic nightlight cast a circle of sickly yellow on the floor. Then came the knock. Soft at first, like a polite tap. 3 measured raps on the glass. His eyes snapped open. He froze, heart hammering in the dark. He told himself it was a dream. That's what kids did. But he heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. He swallowed hard. The blinds trembled slightly. He stared at them, seeing nothing but the flat, gray strips swaying. He didn't dare move. Outside was only the field. Nothing could be there. Nothing. For a week, the knocking came. Always after 11 p.m. Sometimes as late as 2 a.m. The boy started recognizing its rhythm, its casual cruelty. He lay awake every night, listening. When he did fall asleep, he dreamt of the knocking. Worse, sometimes the knocks invaded his dreams, jolting him awake to find they hadn't stopped. It became a routine. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a sentry, guarding a line no one else believed existed. He didn't tell anyone at first. Who would believe him? But the shadows under his eyes deepened. His grades fell. His laughter dried up. Finally, desperate, he confronted his sister. She was 7. He shook her awake one morning, eyes wild. Boy, hushed. Are you the one knocking on my window? She blinked at him, confusion turning to fear. Sister, what are you talking about? Stop scaring me. But she didn't just cry. She ran to their parents. Later that day, his mother and father cornered him in the living room. His father's voice was stern. His mother's was worried. Father, what's this about you scaring your sister with ghost stories? Boy, I'm not lying. Someone's knocking on my window every night. Mother, honey, there's no one there. Stop this. They didn't believe him. Worse, they thought he was making it up for attention. But he knew. He knew what he'd heard. The knocks didn't stop. He lay awake night after night, jumping at shadows, flinching at creaks. Sleep abandoned him. The dark circles under his eyes were badges of war. At school, he was a zombie. He stared at walls, barely heard his teachers. He forgot his homework. His friends asked if he was sick. One day, his teacher touched his shoulder gently. Teacher, are you okay? You look exhausted. He hesitated, then broke down. Someone's knocking on my window at night, every night. No one believes me. Mother, grabbing his arm, we're going home. No one explained anything to him. They thought he was broken or lying, but they didn't think he was right. That night, his mother tried to prove it was in his head. She pulled out the old trundle bed and laid it down beside his. She kissed his forehead, smiled stiffly. "Mother, firm. I'll be here all night. You'll see there's nothing." He didn't argue. He just stared at the window, blinds closed, moonlight slashing through. Time passed. Midnight came and went. The house was silent, except for the creaking of settling wood. He fell into a fitful doze. Then, knock, knock, knock. He bolted up, gasping. His hand shot out to shake her awake. But the bed was empty. Panic surged through him. He felt the blood drain from his face. He was alone. He didn't move for 30 seconds as the knocking continued, each rap like a nail in his coffin. He couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. Finally, he slid silently to the floor and crawled, army style, to the door. He eased it open and slithered into the hall. The house was dark, shadows twisting into monsters. The floorboards creaked under him. He stopped at the living room, peeking around the corner. His parents were there, asleep. On the couch, the TV droned with static. His mother's head lolled against his father's shoulder. They had left him. Even if they hadn't meant to, he was alone. That was when the fear cracked him open. He screamed, sobbing, screaming, his voice cracking like glass. Sound design, child's shrill screaming layered over TV static. The father and child waited outside with a shotgun, but saw nothing. Later that night, terrifying bangs rattled the blinds. The child lay awake in dread. By morning, the house felt dead quiet, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, striking the linoleum in harsh lines. The boy sat slumped at the table, eyes red-rimmed, fingers tracing meaningless patterns. His parents didn't speak at first. His mother busied herself clattering dishes a little too loudly, while his father read the newspaper, ignoring the glances his wife threw his way. The boy's fork scraped the plate, uneaten eggs congealing to rubber. His father cleared his throat. "Nothing happened. It was a dream," he said flatly. The boy didn't answer. In his mind, the bang, bang, bang replayed with sickening clarity, rattling the blinds all over again. But he also remembered the silence outside when he and his father had watched. The clear moonlight, the stillness, the deer that wandered in and out of the cornfield without fear. And then the sound, unmistakable. He wasn't crazy. He knew he wasn't. At school, the boy's exhaustion betrayed him. He nodded off during a spelling quiz, pencil slipping from his fingers. The teacher, Miss Hamilton, placed a hand on his shoulder, startling him awake. His eyes flew open, wild, before settling into confusion. She led him out into the hallway. "This isn't like you," she said gently. "You're usually one of my best students. Is something going on at home?" He shook his head, trying not to cry, but Miss Hamilton could see the tremor in his lip. The way his gaze kept flicking to the windows, the doors, as if checking for threats. Later that day, she called the principal. He sat in the office, legs dangling off the chair, while the adults spoke in hushed tones behind a door. He picked at a scab on his knee, wishing he could disappear. That evening, the boy's mother sat alone at the kitchen table, turning things over in her head. Her husband was in the garage, tinkering with his tools, unwilling to talk. She remembered how scared her son had been, how he'd cried in terror that night. She opened the old junk drawer, rummaging past pens and keys, pulling out a flashlight. Quietly, she crept into the backyard. The cornfield loomed in the distance, a black wall, even under the waxing moon. She switched on the light, sweeping it over the grass, the deck, the window. Nothing. But then she noticed it, on the glass of her son's bedroom window, a smudge. 4 long, greasy streaks, like fingers dragged slowly downward. Her heart stopped. She turned and hurried back inside without another look. She didn't tell her husband. She didn't want to admit she'd gone out there. Instead, she made herself tea, her hands shaking so badly she spilled sugar on the counter. She wiped it up mechanically, mind racing. In the morning, she scrubbed the window clean before anyone woke up. When the boy asked her if she believed him, she hesitated only a second before saying, "It was just the wind, sweetheart." He looked at her with such betrayal that she couldn't meet his eyes. That weekend, the boy begged to stay at his friend Eric's house. His parents reluctantly agreed. He packed a sleeping bag, toothbrush, and a comic book. But once he was there, surrounded by Eric's laughing family and the glow of cartoons on TV, he felt a sudden wave of guilt and fear. At bedtime, he sat on the edge of Eric's bed and whispered, "I think someone's been knocking on my window at night." Eric looked at him, eyes wide, mouth open. "Dude, that's messed up." Neither of them slept well. At 2 a.m., Eric's mom found them huddled in the hallway, both too scared to go back to bed. Back at home, the father stewed. He couldn't stand the fear in his son's eyes, couldn't admit he didn't care. He sat in his recliner, shotgun across his lap, watching TV with the sound muted. Every creak of the house made him flinch. At one point, the ice maker clattered in the fridge, and he nearly dropped the gun, cursing under his breath. But he refused to talk about it. Even when his wife pressed him, he just shook his head and said, "He's imagining things. I won't feed it." On the 7th week, after days of uneasy silence, the knocking returned. This time, the boy didn't scream. He couldn't. He lay paralyzed in his bed, sweat cooling on his back. Tap, tap. Slow, deliberate. He pressed his hands over his ears, but it didn't help. He felt it as much as hurt it. The sound of knuckles on glass. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes, pooling on the pillow. It went on for what felt like forever. Then, silence. The next day, he wouldn't come out of his room. His mother sat on the edge of his bed, voice, "I saw something on your window. I cleaned it. I didn't want to scare you more." He turned away from her, silent. She burst into tears, sobbing into her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. But he didn't forgive her. He couldn't. Not yet. That afternoon, he went outside alone. The sun was high, the sky clear, the cornfield rustling gently in the wind. He stood at the edge of the stalks, watching them sway, listening. He thought he heard whispering, but he couldn't tell if it was the wind or something else. He took one step into the field, then another. The rustling seemed to surround him. He turned and ran back to the house, heart hammering. At school, the principal asked to see him again. He sat in the office, small and miserable, picking at the frayed hem of his jeans. The principal leaned forward. "Your teacher is worried about you." He nodded, but said nothing. The principal sighed. "If something's happening at home, you could." "They don't believe me," he whispered. The principal swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. The principal's office was chilly, the hum of the air conditioner too loud. The boy sat on a hard wooden chair, feet not touching the floor. The principal, Mr. Keller, peered at him over square glasses, trying to be kind. Your teacher says you've been distracted, falling asleep. Is something wrong at home?" The boy said nothing. Mr. Keller folded his hands. "If someone is hurting you, you can tell me." The boy shook his head violently. Mr. Keller sighed. "If you ever need help, just ask." At home, the mother could barely focus. She tried cleaning the kitchen, but her eyes kept darting to the window. The clean glass gleamed innocently in the morning sun, but she remembered the oily streaks. She checked every lock twice, 3 times. When the fridge compressor kicked on with a dull thump, she shrieked, dropping a glass. It shattered, shards skittering across the floor. That night, after dinner, they argued. The father slammed his fist on the table. "I'm done with this talk of monsters at the window." His wife tried to soothe him, but he stood, pointing a trembling finger at his son. "You hear me? Enough. Not another word about it." The boy flinched, tears in his eyes. His mother glared at her husband, but said nothing. The silence afterward was worse than the shouting. Later, the boy lay in bed, blankets pulled to his chin. The house creaked with settling noises. He counted them like sheep, trying to stay calm. Pop, creak, whine. But then, tap, tap, tap. He froze. His breath rasped in his throat. The tapping paused, then resumed, slower. Tap. He buried his face in the pillow, screaming silently. The mother didn't sleep. She sat on the couch in the dark living room, a mug of cold tea untouched in her hands. She watched the hallway that led to her son's room. The clock ticked too loudly. She jumped at every sound, eyes red with. At 3 a.m., she got up, walked to his door, and rested her forehead against it, whispering apologies he couldn't hear. The school brought in a counselor. The boy sat across from a kindly woman with bright earrings and a clipboard. She asked about bad dreams and stress. He picked at his cuticles, silent. When she asked if anyone was hurting him, he shook his head. Finally, she sighed. "Can you draw what you see at night?" He hesitated, then took the crayon. Slowly, shakily, he drew a dark window, and behind it, a pale, faceless shape with long fingers. That evening, she found the crumpled drawing in his backpack. She smoothed it out on the counter, heart pounding. The faceless thing stared back at her in purple wax. She felt sick. She stuffed it into a drawer before her husband saw, but she couldn't forget it. That night, she dreamed it tapped on her window. The father found her crying over the stove. "What's wrong with you?" he demanded. She turned, tears streaming. "Something's coming to his window. It's real." He slapped the counter. "Stop it!" She sobbed harder. He stared at her, breathing hard. Then he picked up his coat and keys. "I'm going to the bar," he muttered. The door slammed behind him. The boy sat on the back steps, hugging his knees. The sun was sinking behind the cornfield, turning the stalks into black spears. The wind hissed through them. He thought he heard a whispering. "Come out," it seemed to say. He shook his head violently. He whispered back, voice shaking, "Leave me alone!" But the wind only howled louder. That night, the knocking was worse than ever. Not just taps. Thud, thud, thud. The window rattled in its frame. He covered his ears, screaming. "Go away!" His mother ran in, flinging on the light. But the window was still, nothing there. Only the boy sobbing, rocking back and forth, repeating, "It wants me. It wants me." Neon beer signs flow. The father sat hunched over a cheap whiskey, staring into it like it could offer answers. Country music droned from a jukebox. He muttered to himself, It's just a phase. He's just a kid." The bartender glanced at him warily but said nothing. Outside, rain began to drum against the window. He didn't want to go home. At home, the mother sat at the kitchen table, rocking. She couldn't stop hearing it in her head. Thud, thud, thud. Her breath quickened. She clutched her chest, wheezing. The room seemed to tilt. She fumbled for her phone, dropped it, crawled to retrieve it. Tears streamed down her face as she gasped. "Please, I can't breathe." She pressed 911 with shaking fingers. Red and white lights strobed outside the farmhouse. The boy watched from his bedroom window, eyes wide. 2 paramedics wheeled his mother out on a stretcher. She looked so small. Her eyes found his, tears glinting. She mouthed something he couldn't hear. The siren wailed as they sped away. He felt cold, alone. He sat by his bedroom window, knees to chest. Rain lashed the glass. He peered into the dark yard. The cornfield was a black wall. Every gust of wind made it wave like an ocean of knives. He felt watched. At one point, lightning flashed. For a split second, he saw something pale among the stalks. He whimpered, burying his face in his knees. The father stumbled in around 2 a.m. He flicked on the living room lamp and blinked blearily. The house was silent except for ticking clocks and wind. He looked around, saw the couch empty. "Honey?" he called, voice cracking. No answer. Then he saw the note on the counter, scrawled in panic. "Hospital. Panic attack. Took her away." He sat down hard, head in hands. The boy crept downstairs. He found his father, sobbing quietly. He hesitated in the doorway. "Dad?" he whispered. The man's head jerked up. His eyes were bloodshot. "Go back to bed," he snapped hoarsely. He opened his mouth, tried to say, "It's at my window," but nothing came out. He turned and fled upstairs, crying silently. Around 3 a.m., the rain ended. The world outside went dead quiet. The boy lay in bed, blankets pulled tight. No wind, no thunder, just silence. Then, creak. The window frame. He couldn't move. Slowly, impossibly slowly, the window latch rattled. He heard it lift. The window slid open. Cold air rushed in. The boy shook uncontrollably. Something pale and jointed slithered over the sill. Long fingers first, then arms pulling the rest. It was tall, impossibly thin. No face, skin like wet paper. It clicked its long fingers together, stretching them. The boy couldn't even scream. Suddenly, he rolled from the bed and hit the floor hard. Pain shot through his arm. He scrambled on all fours. The thing cocked its head, as if listening. He ran for the door. It lunged, scraping its nails across the floorboards. "Dad! Dad! Dad!" The father stumbled out of the living room, blinking. He saw his son bolting down the hall, eyes wild. "What? What is it?" The boy shrieked incoherently, pointing behind him. Then the father heard it. A wet, rasping breath. He turned. At the far end of the hall, it crouched. Its head turned without a face, fingers drumming on the wall. The father's jaw dropped. Oh my God. The father's brain snapped into focus. He grabbed his son around the waist. The creature clicked its fingers, rising slowly. The father ran, half dragging the screaming boy. They burst through the kitchen door, slamming it behind them. Something heavy slammed against the other side. The door shuddered in its frame. Silence fell, except for breathing. Wet, labored animal. It came from the other side of the door. The father pressed his hand over his son's mouth. Shh! The thing sniffed the crack under the door. Long fingernails scratched. Then it went silent. They did. The father crouched down. The boy sobbed into his chest. "Listen to me," he whispered, voice shaking. "We're going to the truck." The boy shook his head frantically. "We have to." The father's eyes darted to the back door. Rain had stopped. He didn't know if it was better or worse. He cracked the back door open. Moonlight revealed the muddy yard. Cornfields rustled softly. The father scanned for movement. He picked up the boy and ran. Mud sucked at his boots. The old pickup truck sat 20 yards away. Every step felt like it took hours. A low rasp. The father whipped his head around. At the kitchen door, the thing emerged. It unfolded itself, impossibly tall. Moonlight made its pale skin glow. It had no face, yet it turned to look at them. The father ran faster, lungs burning. The father shoved the boy inside, slammed the door. He scrambled into the driver's seat, jammed the keys in, turned. Outside, the corn parted in waves as something moved toward them. A shape loomed by the passenger side. Long fingers tapped the glass. The boy screamed. The father grabbed him and rolled them both to the driver's side floor. Glass cracked. The thing's hand pressed against the window, skin squeaking. It didn't even need eyes to find them. The father wrapped both arms around the boy. Tears streamed down his face. He whispered into the boy's hair, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Outside, the creature circled. It clicked its fingers, cocking its head like a dog. The father's heart pounded in his ears. He made a choice. He reached under the seat, found the old emergency flare. It sputtered to life in his shaking hands. Red light flooded the cab. He threw the door open. Screaming defiance, he waved it at the thing. The creature recoiled, limbs snapping backward. Its skin blistered in the harsh glow. It hissed like steam escape. The father kept the flare up, screaming curses into the night. He turned to the boy. "Don't look away." Together, they backed away from the truck. The cornfield rattled, the thing retreating into its depths. For now, they ran for the house. The father slammed the back door shut. He set the boy down, locked the deadbolt, grabbed the kitchen table and shoved it against the door. Chairs, drawers, anything heavy went on top. His hands trembled. "Help me," he told his son. The boy obeyed without question, tears streaking his muddy face. They collapsed onto the floor. For a moment, there was only breathing. The father listened for the creature. Nothing. The wind outside picked up, rattling the house. A branch scratched against the window. The boy sobbed. "It's gone," the father lied. The boy whispered, "Why doesn't it have a face?" The father swallowed. He had no answer. He stroked the boy's hair with shaking fingers. "It's not supposed to be here," he said finally. But his voice cracked on the words. The father's mind raced. The truck was ruined. The phones didn't work. The nearest neighbor was miles away. He had a hunting rifle in the closet and the flares. He glanced at the boy. "Stay here," he whispered. "Don't move, no matter what." He eased open the closet. The rifle was there. He checked the chamber. Loaded. A box of shells tumbled to the floor. He cursed softly. As he knelt to scoop them up, something outside knocked on the window. Delicate, playful, tap, tap, tap. He stood slowly, rifle raised. The creature's silhouette filled the window. No face, but it pressed close, as if staring. Its fingers splayed against the glass. The father's hands shook. He aimed, but it didn't move. It just waited. A crack appeared in the glass, then another. The creature leaned harder. The father fired. The window exploded inward. Glass and splinters flew. He stumbled back. The thing flowed in after them, pale limbs bending. It clicked its fingers like castanets. The boy screamed. The father grabbed him, dragging him toward the hall. The creature lunged, impossibly fast. It seized the father's ankle. He fell. The boy clawed at him, crying, "Daddy!" The father rolled, jamming the rifle under its arm. Fired. Black ichor sprayed the floor. The creature shrieked like tearing metal. The father scooped the boy up, kicked the creature away. It writhed, screaming, its skin bubbling. He ran for the front door, kicked it open. Cold wind hit them. He didn't look back. He ran into the corn. The stalks closed behind them. They ran until they couldn't. Dawn was just touching the sky with pale light. The father collapsed in the mud. The boy curled against him. They shivered, exhausted. The cornfield rustled softly. Silence fell. For now. The father turned his head. In the half-light, deep among the stalks, something pale watched them. No face, no eyes, but it knew exactly where they were. And the father finally understood it would never stop. Fade to black. The story ends unresolved, but terrifying, suggesting it will never truly leave them alone. If you like this story, please like, share, and subscribe our channel.